Alright, now that we've gone ahead and racked and stacked the server into the rack, we're going to go ahead and power it on. We're going to go ahead and make sure that everything's cabled up, so all the power connections are cabled up, the network connections are cabled up. We're going to go ahead and plug our laptop into the switch, and we're going to go ahead and prepare to actually run the Foundation standalone with the Foundation standalone virtual machine. Now, one of the reasons that we're actually using the Foundation standalone virtual machine is if the block itself is non-functional. In order to run the Foundation Java applet, we need to actually go ahead and have a functional block with a functional hypervisor and a functional controller virtual machine. If we don't have that ability, we can use the standalone virtual machine and do what's called a bare metal installation, which basically installs a hypervisor and the controller virtual machines without a functioning system. We can also use the standalone virtual machine to install the Nutanix operating system and hypervisor if the controller virtual machines are functioning instead of using the Java applet. And we can actually go ahead and use the Foundation standalone if we don't have the Nutanix operating system or Acropolis operating system 4.5 or higher installed. If it's 4.5 or if it's lower than 4.5, we'll need to use the standalone virtual machine to actually go ahead and do the Foundation install. So let's go ahead and start to it. Let's go ahead and launch your Foundation standalone virtual machine and go ahead and start that process. Alright, so as you can see, I've launched the Foundation's standalone virtual machine on the desktop. So one of the first things that we want to make sure we do is set the Foundation IP address. So this is the IP address for the virtual machine. We just go over into this little icon on the desktop and run that in the terminal. And we want to give this a static IP address. So we want to actually change the IP of ETH0. And go ahead and uncheck DHCP and give it a static IP address. Now you want the static IP address to be the same subnet as the rest of your controller virtual machine and hypervisor ESX. So I'm going to give this IP address of 10.1.1.3. We'll put on the same net mask. And the gateway IP address and DNS server IP addresses, they don't actually have to be entered for this process. Go ahead and save, and then save and quit. Alright, and then we're going to go ahead and launch the Foundation GUI. And here's the Foundation GUI as a web page. Actually, one of the other things that we want to double check if this is your first time running Foundation is to make sure that the hypervisor ISO that you uploaded previously into the Foundation Virtual Machine Standalone is one of the correct ISOs. We do actually keep a validated list of supported ISOs on here, and we actually use MD5 checksums to make sure that this is one of the supported lists. So if we go into the ISO for the hypervisor, you can see here I've got my hypervisor for the ISO. And we also have maintain what we call a ISO hypervisor JSON file. And that is called the ISO whitelist.json. So we can actually go ahead and edit this and take a look at the MD5 checksums for each individual ISO that we have on here. Now, to actually double check that, we would go into the directory where the ISO is. So that would be Foundation ISO's hypervisor, in this case ESX. And we can do an MD5 sum on that file. That'll actually go ahead and output the MD5 checksum for this particular ISO. We can go ahead and take a look at the ISO whitelist and make sure that same checksum is located on our whitelist. That way we know that this is a supported ISO whitelist. And here we go. This MD5 checksum here matches this MD5 checksum I've downloaded and uploaded into the standalone virtual machine. All right, so let's go back into the Foundation GUI. And we will enter the information that was provided by the customer from the pre-install checklist. Here's a hint. We can take this net mask and do a Control-C and Control-V into the other fields. And same thing for the gateway. Now the IPMI username password is important, and the default for this is admin, admin in all uppercase. Here we can actually change the memory for the controller virtual machine during installation. By default it's at 16 gigabytes, but we can go all the way up to 64 if needed, depending on if you have deduplication enabled or not on the system. At this point we'll leave it at default. Now we also have the multi-homing option here, and so this is if your IPMI IP address is on a different subnet other than your hypervisor and CVM. Your hypervisor and CVM needs to be on the same subnet in order for everything to work correctly, but your IPMI does not. So if your IPMI is on a different subnet, we actually want to go ahead and turn on multi-homing, put in the IPMI IP address on that other network. That way we can actually get access to it during the Foundation process, because we do need a valid IP address during the Foundation process and ability to route to that other network. Now hitting next, we'll actually go into the node discovery. So this will actually do a network node discovery of the powered on nodes and bring up any nodes that are unconfigured onto the network. As you can see here, I have 3 nodes, A, B, C, on this block ID that are unconfigured. And I'm going to actually go ahead and use these. So you can go ahead and make sure these 3 nodes are checked. And then we're going to enter the IPMI IP address, hypervisor IP address, and CVM IP address. So if we actually go up into the top here, and we can actually go ahead and enter the first IP address, and it's actually going to go ahead and auto-populate the rest of the IP addresses for the rest of the nodes. And the same thing with the hypervisor too. And the CVM IP address. Now, if any of these nodes are the 6035C storage only node models, you want to actually go ahead and click on the checkbox over here, and that'll actually go ahead and image that in a different way, because the 6035Cs will have Acropolis hypervisor itself on there only, whether or not you're running whatever hypervisor the rest of the systems. We talked about the bare metal install, which is if the block itself and nodes don't actually have a functional hypervisor and a functional controller virtual machines. So at this point, you will not see any nodes discovered, and so you would actually go ahead and click on this add block button here. And so this will actually add a new entry. So you can add the number of blocks that you have and the number of nodes. So in this case, we have 1 block and 3 nodes. And then you can see here that it's a block ID of a generic block. You can go ahead and create your own block ID or leave that there. And what next information that you would need at that point is the IPMI MAC address. So the IPMI MAC address there's a sticker on the back of each individual node. And we can actually go ahead and get that MAC address on the back of each individual node for that IPMI MAC address. So in this case, we have the MAC IPMI address, and I'm going to go ahead and enter that here. And for node C. And at this point, you can also enter the IPMI IP address, hypervisor IP address, and controller virtual machine IP address, just like we did previously with the discovered nodes. And then you would go ahead and make sure that's checked. We're actually going to go ahead and continue on because the rest of the stage is exactly the same, whether you do a bare metal install or a regular installation. So we're actually going to go ahead and remove this block from this stage. Now that we have all the nodes selected, we're going to hit next. And we're going to choose which hypervisor we want, ESX, Hyper-V, or Acropolis hypervisor. In this case, we're actually going to do it in ESX. And we're going to choose that Acropolis package that we previously uploaded in the previous segment. You can see here that it actually went ahead and took a look into the directory and saw that there is this particular package installed, as well as the version of the hypervisor ISO image. Now, if you don't have your correct version installed already, and you can go ahead and SCP it back into the standalone virtual machine at this point, and then click on the refresh Acropolis package and refresh hypervisor image, and that'll actually go ahead and refresh this drop-down list. Once we have our Acropolis package and hypervisor ISO image selected, we're going to hit next. And now we can actually go ahead and create the cluster. So we're going to click on create new cluster. We want to give the cluster name. So we're going to call this Nutanix 1, and we're going to give it the external IP address. Remember, this is the same thing as the server virtual IP address, or VIP. And the DNS servers for the controller virtual machines and the NTP servers for both the CVM and the hypervisor. Here we can actually set the max redundancy factor. So this tells this gives the ability to set to RF2 or RF3 in the cluster. Now, if we set it to RF3, you do need a minimum of 5 nodes to set RF3. Otherwise, we'll set it to RF2. We also have some post-imaging tests that we can run. This will actually automatically run our diagnostics and our NCC, or Nutanix Consistency Checker. Now, during this process, this will actually go ahead and add additional time to the foundation process. And I don't recommend turning this on or running the checks until we have it up and running on the customer's network, since we currently still have this connected to our own little 1 gigabit switch. After that, we can go ahead and select the nodes that we actually want to assign to this particular cluster, Nutanix 1. Now, we can actually create multiple clusters by creating the create new cluster button here, and create multiple clusters, and then assign different nodes to different clusters as well too. In this case, we're just going to create one cluster and just have all 3 nodes go into that one cluster. All right, now that we're set, we can go ahead and click on this Run Installation button at the very top right corner. Notice there is no extra Next button at the bottom right. Run Installation and click on Proceed. And this will actually then go ahead and configure the IPMI addresses, and then go ahead and lay the foundation imaging software. So we're going to go ahead and image the system with the version of the hypervisor, and then install the controller virtual machines and set all the settings for you automatically. So this will take usually about an hour, a little bit less than an hour for 3 to 4 nodes at this point. Now, as you can see, the system is actually running, and we have a couple of log files that we can take a look at. There is a separate log file for the overall progress. If we click on that log button, it'll actually pop up a new window and display the log file in a new tab on the browser. We also have a separate log file for the cluster creation status. So if we click on that, that'll bring that up. And we also have log files for each individual node as it runs. Now, there's going to be a lot of information in the log file. It's going to be very verbose. So don't worry about if you see a lot of different things going on, and you may even see the log files say error or something similar to that. A lot of that is actually normal process. However, if we do have an issue, we will actually see it on this log screen here, and it will tell you what the progress is. And if we do have any nodes that for some reason don't image correctly, at the end of the install, we actually will have a button at the top right that will actually let you go ahead and rerun that image installation again on those failed nodes. So we'll go ahead and check back with this when this is done.